Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya daily Srimad Bhagavatam class. So, I am Advaita Pran from ISKCON Newtown, Kolkata. We are continuously reading Srimad Bhagavatam, fourth chapter, fourth canto, ninth chapter. Guru Maharaj returns one. So, before starting, we'll recite Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraet Nashtaprayesu Avagreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki Namayam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Saminti Namine Snigdha Cheta Supraneta Bhagvinam Charasapratam Prabhupada Prana Nomi Bhakti Charu Padam Namayam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Saminti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam karati vachalam pangum ghayate girim Yatkripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Vinatarinam Paramanam Namadhvam Chaitanya Isharam Tasat. Hare Krishna. So you can see Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto 9th chapter. Devamad returns on Ahovata mama natyamyam mandabhagya sapashyata Bhavachida padamulam Katvaya che yad antavat. Translation, alas, just look at me. I am so unfortunate. I approached the lotus feet of the lotus of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can immediately cut the chain of the repetition of birth and death. But still, out of my foolishness, I prayed for things which are perishable. But the word Anatmayam is very significant in these words. Atma means the soul, and Anatma means without in conception of the soul. So Rishabdeva instructed his sons Rishabdeva instructed his son that unless a human being comes to the point of understanding the Atma or spiritual position, whatever he does is ignorance, and this brings only defeat in his life. Dhruva Maharaja regrets his fortunate position, for although he approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is always able to give his devotee the highest benediction of cessation of the reputation of birth and death, which is impossible for any demigod to offer. He foolishly wanted something perishable. When Hiranyakashipu asks immortality from Lord Brahma expressed his inability to offer such a benediction because he himself is not immortal. Therefore, immortality, a complete cessation of the chain of repeated birth and death, can be offered by the Supreme Lord, the personality of God and himself, not by others. Harim vina na mritam taranti. It is said that without the blessings of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can stop the continuous chain of birth and death within this material world. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is also called Bhavachit. The Vaishnava philosophy is in the process of Krishna consciousness prohibits the devotee from all kinds of material aspirations. The Vaishnava devotee should always be Anya Vilasita Sunya, free from all material aspirations, for the results of fruitive activities are empiric philosophical speculation. Dhruva Maharaj was actually initiated by Narad Muni, the greatest Vaishnava, in the chanting of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This mantra is a Vishnu mantra. For by practicing the chanting of this mantra, one is elevated to the Vishnu Loka. Dhruva Maharaj regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by a Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the causeless mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. Look 4.9.32. मतिर्विदूषिता देवै पतद्भिर असहिष्णुभिः यो नारदा वचस्तथ्यं न ग्राहीशम् असत्तमा. Translation: since all the demigods who are situated in the higher planetary system will have to come down again, they are all envious of my being elevated to Vaikuntha Loka by devotional service. These intolerant demigods have dissipated my intelligence, and only for this reason could I not accept the genuine benediction of the instructions of sage Narada. Purport as shown by many instances in the Vedic literature, when a person undergoes severe austerities, the demigods become very much perturbed because they are always afraid of losing their posts as the predominating deities of the heavenly planets. It is known to them that their position in the higher planetary system is impermanent. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, Sine Punya Martha Lokam Veshanti. It is said in the Gita that after exhausting the results of their pious activities, all the demigods who are inhabitants of the higher planetary system have to come back again to this earth. It is a fact that the demigods control the different activities of the limbs of our bodies. Actually, we are not free even in moving our eyelids. Everything is controlled by them. Dhruva Maharaj's conclusion is that these demigods, being envious of his superior position in devotional service, conspired against him to pollute his intelligence, and thus, although he was the disciple of a great Vaishnava Narad Muni, he could not accept Narada's valid instructions. Now, Dhruva Maharaj regretted very much that he had neglected these instructions. Narada Muni had asked him, why should you bother about insult or adoration from your stepmother? He, of course, said to Dhruva Maharaj that since Dhruva was only a child, what did he have to do with such insult or adoration? But Dhruva Maharaj was determined to achieve the benediction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore Narada advised him to go back to home for the time being, and in mature time he could try to practice devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj regretted that he had rejected the advice of Narada Muni and was adamant in asking him for something perishable, namely revenge against his stepmother for her insult and possession of the kingdom of his father. Dhruva Maharaj regretted very much that he could not take seriously the instruction of his spiritual master and that his consciousness was therefore contaminated. Still, the Lord is so merciful that due to Dhruva's execution of devotional service, he offered Dhruva the unlimited Vaishnava goal. Look 33. Daive mayam upasritya prasupta iva bhinnadrik tapye dvitiya pai asati vitairid vrityavyadhid ruja. Translation: Dhruva Maharaj lamented, I was under the influence of illusory energy. Being ignorant of the actual facts, I was sleeping on her lap. Under a vision of duality, I saw my brother as my enemy, and falsely I lamented within my heart, thinking they are my enemies. Purport. Their knowledge is revealed to a devotee only when he comes to the right conclusion about life by the grace of the Lord. Our creation of friends and enemies within this material world is something like dreaming at night. In dreams, we create so many things out of various impressions in the subconsciousness mind, but all such creations are simply temporary and unreal. In the same way, although apparently we are awake in material life, because we have no information about of the soul, the super soul, we create many friends and enemies simply out of imagination. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that within this material world, the material consciousness, good and bad are the same. The distinction between good and bad is simply a mental concoction. Actual fact is that all living entities are sons of God or by products of his marginal energy. Because of our being contaminated by the modes of material nature, we distinguish one spiritual spark of another. That is also another kind of dreaming. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are actually learned do not make any distinction between a learned scholar, a Brahmana, an elephant, a dog, and a Chandala. They do not see in terms of the external body, rather, they see the person as spirit soul. By higher understanding, one can know that the material body is nothing but a combination of five material elements. In that sense, also the bodily construction of a human being and that of a demigod are one and the same. From the spiritual point of view, we are all spiritual sparks, parts and parcels of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Either materially or spiritually, we are basically one, but we make friends and enemies as dictated by the illusory energy. Dhruva Maharaj therefore said, Daivim Mayam Upasritya. The cause of his bewilderment was his association with the illusory material energy. Slok 34. Mayatat prarthitam vartham chikitseva gata yushi prasadya jagat atmanam tapasa dusprasadanam bhavachidam ayacheham bhavam bhagya vivarjita. Translation: It is very difficult to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in my case, although I have satisfied the Supreme Super Soul of the whole universe, I have prayed only for useless things. My activities were exactly like treatment given to a person who is already dead. Just see how unfortunate I am. For in spite of meeting the Supreme Lord, who can cut one's link with birth and death, I have prayed for the same conditions again. Purport: Sometimes it so happens that a devotee engaged in the loving service of the Lord desires something material benefit in exchange for this service. This is not the proper way to discharge devotional service out of ignorance, of course. Sometimes a devotee does so, but Dhruva Maharaj regrets his personal behavior in this connection. Text 35. स्वरजं यच्छतो मध्यम मनो मे वीक्षितो वता ईश्वरत क्षीण पुण्येन फलिकारण इव ध्वना. Translation: Because of my state of complete foolishness and paucity of pious activities, although the Lord offered me his personal service, I wanted material name, fame, and prosperity. My case is just like that of the poor man who, when he satisfied a great emperor who wanted to give him anything he might ask, out of ignorance asked only a few broken grains of parched rice. Purport: In this verse, the word Swarajyam, which means complete independence, is very significant. A conditioned soul does not know what complete independence is. Complete independence means situation in one's own constitutional position. The real independence of a living entity who is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to remain always dependent on the Supreme Lord, just like a child who plays in complete independence, guided by his parents who watch over him. The independence of the conditioned soul does not mean to fight with the obstacles offered by Maya, but to surrender to Krishna in the material world. In the material world, everyone is trying to become completely independent by fighting against the obstacles offered by Maya. This is called the struggle for existence. Real independence is to be reinstated in the service of the Lord. Anyone who goes to the Vaikuntha planets or Golok Vrindavan planet is freely offering his service to the Lord. That is complete independence, just contrary to this material world, material overlordship, which we wrongly take to be independence. Many great political leaders have tried to establish independence, but due to such so-called independence, the people's dependence has only increased. The living entity cannot be happy trying to be independent in the material world. One has to surrender, therefore, unto the lotus feet of the Lord and engage in his original eternal service. Dhruva Maharaj regrets that he wanted material opulence and greater prosperity than that of his great grandfather, Lord Brahma. His begging from the Lord was like a poor man asking a great emperor for a few grains of broken rice. The conclusion is that anyone who is engaged in the loving service of the Lord should never ask for material prosperity from the Lord. The awarding of material prosperity simply depends on the stringent rules and regulations of the external energy. Pure devotees ask the Lord only for the privilege of serving Him. This is our real independence. If we want anything else, it is a sign of our misfortune. Maitra Uvacha Navay Mukundasya Padarvindayo Rajo Jusastata Bhavadrisha Jana Vanchanti Taddasyam Rite Ratham Atmano Riddhichaya Labdhamana Samradhaya. Translation. The great sage of Maitra continued, my dear Vidura, persons like you, who are pure devotees of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of God, and who can offer liberation, and who are always attached to the honey of his lotus feet, are always satisfied in serving at the lotus feet of the Lord. In any condition of life, such persons remain satisfied, and thus they never ask the Lord for material prosperity. Purport in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He is the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor of everything and anything within this creation, and the supreme friend of everyone. When one knows these things perfectly, he is always satisfied. The pure devotee never hankers after any kind of material prosperity. The karmis, jnanis, and yogis, however, endeavor always for their own personal happiness. Karmis work day and night to improve their economic condition. Jnanis undergo severe austerities in order to get liberation, and yogis also undergo severe austerities by practicing the yoga system for attainment of wonderful mystic powers. A devotee, however, is not interested in such activities. It does not want mystic powers or liberation or material prosperity. He is just satisfied in any condition of life as long as he is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The Lord's feet are compared to the lotus wherein there is saffron dust. A devotee is always engaged in drinking the honey from the lotus feet of the Lord. Unless one is freed from all material desires, he cannot actually taste the honey from the Lord's lotus feet. One has to discharge his devotional duties without being disturbed by, by the coming and going of material circumstances. This desirelessness for material prosperity is called niskama. One should not mistakenly think that Niskama means giving up all desires. That is impossible. A living entity is eternally existent. He cannot give up desires. A living entity must have desires. That is the symptom of life. When there is a recommendation of to become desireless, it is to be understood that this means that we should not desire anything for our sense gratification. For a devotee, this state of mind, nispriha, is the right position. Actually, every one of us already has an arrangement for our standard of material comforts. A devotee should always remain satisfied with the standard of comforts offered by the Lord. As stated in the Ishopanishad, Tena Taktena Bhunjita. This saves time for executing Krishna consciousness. Slok 37. Akarnyatma jam ayantam samparetya yathagatam rajana saddadhe bhadram abhadrasha mama. Translation: When King Uttanpad heard that his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to the life after death, he could not put his faith in this message, for he was doubtful of how it could happen. He considered himself the most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune. But Dhruva Maharaj, a 5-year-old boy, went to the forest for penance and austerity, and the king could not at all believe that a small boy of such a tender age could live in the forest. He was certain that Dhruva was dead. He therefore could not fix his faith in the message that Dhruva Maharaj was coming back home again. For him, this message said that a dead man was coming back home, and so he could not believe it. After Dhruva Maharaj's departure from home, King Uttanapa thought that he was the cause of Dhruva's living, and thus he considered himself the most wretched. Therefore, even though it was possible that his lost son was coming back from the kingdom of death, thought that since he was most sinful, it was not possible for him to be so fortunate as to get back his lost son. 38. Shraddhaya vakyam devarser harsa vegena darsita vartahartur atiprito haram pradan mahadhanam. Translation: Although he could not believe the words of the messenger, he had full faith in the word, the great sage Narada. Thus he was greatly overwhelmed by the news, and he immediately offered the messenger a highly valuable necklace in great satisfaction. Text 39 to 40. Sad aswam ratham aruhya kartaswara pariskritam Ramanai vriddascha parayasto matya vandubhi Sankhadandubhi nadena brahma ghoshena venubhi Niskrama purat tuturnam atmajahi sanat sukha. Translation: The king Uttanpad, being very eager to see the face of his lost son, mounted a chariot drawn by excellent horses and bedecked with golden filigree. Talking with him, many learned Brahmanas, all the elderly personalities of his family, his officers, his ministers, and his immediate friends, he immediately left the city. As he proceeded in this parade, there were auspicious sounds of consuls, fiddle drums, flutes, and the chanting of Vedic mantras to indicate all good fortune. 41. Suniti suruchistasya mahishaurukma bhushite arujyasi vikam sardham uttamena jagmatu. Translation: Both the queens of King Uttanpad, namely Suniti and Suruchi, along with his other son Uttama, appeared in the procession The queens were seated on a palanquin, but after the departure of Lord of Dhruva Maharaj from the palace, the king was very afflicted, but by the king words of Saint Narada, he was partially satisfied. He could understand the great fortune of his wife Suniti and the great misfortune of Queen Suruchi. For these facts were certainly very open in the palace, but still, when the news reached the palace that Dhruva Maharaj was returning, his mother Suniti, out of her great compassion and due to being the mother of a great Vaishnava, did not hesitate to take the other's wife, Suruchi, and her son, Uttama, the same palanquin. That was the greatness of Queen Suniti, the mother of the great Vaishnava, Dhruva Maharaj. So today we will stop here. So tomorrow we'll continue from slok 42 to 43, 42, 43. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. जगत गुरु श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, पवित्र पावन श्री गुरु महाराज की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव भक्त वृंद की जय, जय निताय गौतम प्रेमानंद।